Hello and welcome to Happy Horror Time. My name is Tim Murdoch.
And my name is Matt Emmert. And since we began this podcast 3 years ago, it's been a dream of mine to interview a cast member from my favorite film of all time, Halloween. And boy, do we have a good one for you, listeners. Before starring in John Carpenter's horror classic, today's special guest made red baseball caps stylish, playing Norma in 1976's Carrie. And then in 1978's Halloween, she made us totally fall in love with the word totally as Laurie Strode's bubbly friend Lynda. But it was all trick and no treat for Lynda that night, as Michael Myers got the best of her and never even gave her that beer. We are so incredibly excited to welcome to the podcast a true scream queen, PJ Souls.
Yay. Well, I can't have a better intro than that. Totally. Thank you.
Thank you. We are so excited. Like I said, one thing that people know about me on the podcast is that Halloween has been my favorite film from since I was a kid. So being able to talk to not just anyone from the cast, but you especially is just a complete honor.
Yes. Ever since I've known Matt, it's Halloween 24/7, 100. There's not 100 days in the year. No. There's 365.
100 days. No, but really, PJ, it's so honored. It's almost like for me, this is like such a big moment. So thank you so much.
Yeah, there's 364 waiting days and one day of Halloween. Okay.
one day of Halloween. So, PJ, we've done a little research on you and listened to a few of the podcasts you've been on where we learned that you were born in Germany and then went to high school in Belgium and have lived in 4 different continents. Is that correct?
Yes, my father was from Holland. He met my mother in Germany after the war. My mother was from New Jersey. Her first husband had gotten killed in the war, and she went over to pay respects to where they had buried him in a German, in actually a cemetery in France. And then she went to an army base, got a job as a secretary for the rebuilding of Germany. And my father from Holland had been captured by the Nazis and put in a work camp. And he had been released and sent to the same army camp that my mother was working out at as a secretary. And that's very strange circumstances, but that's how they met. And in any event, he spoke 6 languages, as a lot of the Europeans do. And she got a job with a new company that was an insurance company after working for the army. And I got him a job. And quickly he rose up to opening their branch offices worldwide. So from Germany, we went to Morocco, to Casablanca, very exotic. I went to kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade in Casablanca, which is amazing. I have wonderful, sweet memories from there. And then we went to Maracaibo, Venezuela. These are all countries that, needed an insurance company that insured American corporations overseas, like oil companies and or the military. And then we had a brief little spell in New Jersey, and when my dad worked in New York. And then we went to Brussels, where he actually was working 2 weeks out of the month in Algeria. But I went to high school at the International School of Brussels, which I love. So, and then I came back. They moved to Istanbul, Turkey, but then I came to New York State to go to college. So.
Wow.
Long story.
No, that is one of the most incredible childhoods I've ever heard. Did you have a favorite of all of those places to live as a young kid?
New Jersey.
No, not New Jersey. Although I did it was Oakland, New Jersey, and we had a house on the Crystal Lake, of all things, and the Ramapo River was in the back of the house. So that was a very idyllic place. And but I would say Maracaibo only because the boating there was wonderful. My dad had a small little boat and we would explore little islands. But I really also like Brussels because I had a lot of freedom there. I was the editor of my high school paper. We had a class of 22 kids, but so I did the paper and I kept asking for assignments from everybody, but they'd never turned it in. So I ended up every month doing the whole paper myself. But it gave me a lot of freedom. I was able to take the trams all the way down to the Grand Place and to the where the publisher, the printing press was. So it couldn't happen today. It was but I speak French and Spanish. And so I adore my childhood. My older brother didn't take to it that much. Mm-hmm. And my younger brother was too young to appreciate it. But I think I had a wonderful childhood.
That's amazing. We also learned that you spent some time after you went to New York at the Actors Studio, which kind of inspired you to change your career path. So what was it about your time at the Actors Studio that convinced you to pursue acting?
Well, I was spending the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, of which I was going to transfer from Briarcliff College in New York State to Georgetown in Washington, D.C. But my roommate in New York asked me to come stay with her for the summer because my parents, like I said, were in Istanbul and I didn't want to go there. I'd had kind of enough. And I was on my own now. I was 18. I was like, I was so happy to be in America. So I happened to walk by the Actors Studio. I was just curious, walking around the whole area of the Broadway scene. And there was a sign in the window that said, will exchange auditing classes if you run the spotlight on the weekend productions, which happened to be Joanna Miles and Scott Glenn. So I applied, got the job running the spotlight, audited a bunch of the classes. And even though I was, very fluent in French and Spanish, took French literature, was my minor in college. Russian was my major in college, actually. But I always fancied a career in journalism since I was the editor of the school paper. And I really liked it, liked how the whole printing process went. But I thought, well, I've always been in the school plays, even in Venezuela. The first time ever on stage was in Maracaibo. I was the witch in Hansel and Gretel. And as a sixth grader, I won the part from the eighth grader for the evening performance. She had to do the afternoon. So I always had a little acting bug in me. So anyway, when I went there and I was doing the spotlight on the weekend, and then this guy his name was Joshua White, he became my boyfriend. He did the Joshua Light show at the Fillmore East on the weekends. And he said, "Are you really interested in acting?" And I said, "Well, I guess. I don't know. I'm here for the summer." And he said, "Well, my sister is an actress and she has a really cool agent. Why don't you swing by? I'll introduce you to Lester and Juliette Lewis," and did. And just, it was sort of a lark. It was okay. This is fun. And the first commercial they sent me out for, which was Crisco Oil, I got. And then I got 3 more after that. And I just made a ton of money that summer.
You're like, this sounds good.
And I was like, is this what it is? And then, I tried to get involved in the Broadway, off-Broadway scene, but that wasn't really my style. It wasn't something that I really gravitated towards. But I did go to Georgetown. I went there for only a couple of weeks. I had at that time, by then, had already established my relationship with Joshua, and I missed him, and I wanted to go back. And I just, I got a soap opera, Love Is Many Splendid thing. I mean, I just had a good life there. My parents didn't know for 2 years. They thought I was going to college. Back then, you wrote letters. I was writing great letters.
Were you in the letters pretending like, oh, Georgetown is great, like that?
No, I didn't deceive to that point. It was really after about 6 months when I think my dad had gotten a letter from them saying, your daughter has not been in class. And he asked me what was going on, But I'm very proud that I got into Georgetown because they were opening up the School of Languages and Linguistics for women the year that I was going. And me and another girl were the only 2 accepted that year. That would have been 1969. So That was kind of exciting. On the other hand, my boyfriend Joshua White did the light show at Woodstock, and I went to Woodstock with him. So, well, I didn't go to Georgetown, but I did go to Woodstock, of which, we only were there the first and second day. By then, the rains and the mud were so bad, and Joshua couldn't do they actually had to use the sheet that they had for the screen to cover the instruments, so he had nothing to project his light show on. But we were in a trailer behind the stage, and I remember meeting a lot of the people, but at that point I wasn't really into the music scene and wasn't really well aware of who everybody was. I just thought, what a mess. Who would come to this?
My mom went to Woodstock randomly, and she still has her ticket from there. So you could have met my mom.
Cool. That's so cool.
Growing up, were you a fan of horror films? Were they on your radar? If you weren't into Woodstock, you were into horror films.
Yeah.
Right?
Did any make an impact on you growing up?
You know what? No, I didn't really get to watch a lot of films. So the first film I ever saw was in Maracaibo. I saw Ben-Hur, and the first time, I think I was probably in 5th grade. So I was 10 or 11. My parents took a family outing on a Sunday with another family, and we went to a theater. It was the first time I'd been in a movie theater and watched Ben-Hur. And I wouldn't leave. I mean, I was crying. My dad was saying, "It's over. Come on, Pamela, we have to go." I go, "No. What happened to the actors? And then what happened to them?" My dad was, "Don't worry, they're having a Coke. They're fine. They're living their lives. It's just
So that was kind of horror for you.
It made a big impact on me.
Wow. Okay. I mean, hey, everyone has those stories of a movie that affected them when they were young.
That was my first movie, but I do say every time we would go from continent, country to country, we had to come back to New York City. We stayed for 2 months in the summer. We got like 12 different vaccinations for the next country we're going to. We stayed at this hotel that was right near Central Park. Not fancy. It was the Manger Windsor. It wasn't like, the
Four
one of the best
Seasons.
things. No, definitely not. But we had access to room service. I could take my brother and go to the Central Park with a bag of cherries. But when everyone else was sleeping at 3:00 in the morning, for some reason, I was excited being there. And I would have always turned the TV on, watch Shirley Temple. I loved Shirley Temple movies. I loved all the stuff that would come on at that time. So inside, I guess I was aware of movies and things like that, but not to the point of saying within myself, oh, this is what I want to do when I get older. I always thought I was really on more of a language, or like I said, a journalism track.
Yeah, of course. So, I always thought that Carrie was your first film, but then I read something about you playing a shampoo model in a 1974 film called No Place Like Home, but the film wasn't finished until 2006. Is that true?
Oh, well, yes. Well, after I was with Joshua, then I met a musician called Stephen Souls. That's where I get my souls from. And he was in a group called the Tidbits, and they were recording in Jamaica. They were kind of an American reggae band, light reggae, poppy, but really cool, influenced by Jamaica, because they had gone to Jamaica a bunch of times with Bobby Bloom, who wrote Montego Bay. I don't know if you remember that song, Montego Bay. It's a really cool song. Anyway, it was a really nice group, and they did a recording there. And then we met this guy, Perry Hensel, who was a filmmaker, and he wanted to do this film. He actually did The Harder They Come with Jimmy Cliff. I don't know if you know that movie, but it's a great one of the first Jamaican films to feature actual real Jamaicans on screen. They loved it. We went to one of the first screenings and people were howling and loving it. So then this was a trilogy he was doing, but I guess he couldn't, and so he asked me to play the part of a songwriter, which is really funny because I ended up playing Riff Randall, who was a songwriter too. But way before that, I was a songwriter in No Place Like Home. And I was supposed, and it was written by then I got married to Stephen Souls, and he wrote the song with his brother, and it was called World Full of Beauty, and I sing it in the movie, and I do this shampoo commercial, half naked in a waterfall, washing my hair. I absolutely loved it, loved Jamaica. Now, that was in the 70s when it cost like $100 round trip to go from LaGuardia or JFK to Montego Bay. It was fantastic. And before Negril, which is a strip of 7 Mile Beach there, it's now all hotels. There were just little cabins there before. So I have wonderful, I'm lucky that I got to experience a lot of these places in the 70s and 80s that now are completely changed, the whole look and mood of it. But so that was sort of just sort of an easygoing atmosphere. It wasn't like hardcore acting, but it was a great experience. But I had been on Love is a Many Splendored Thing. I had done a movie called Zebra. It was a 20-minute short for a photographer, because I also was doing modeling at the time. So I, got together with a lot of photographers in New York City and did photo shoots. And, one of them, Rick Van Glintenkamp, he did this short out in Block Island. So I had a little experience with. And that was actually a little bit of a horror film. I played a girl that was being stalked by somebody who you never see. And I'm mostly in a bathtub. You don't see me nude or anything, but I'm in a bubble bath being scared all the time. I think he liked my eyes.
So that prepared you. Well, jumping right into Carrie. So you've mentioned before that you auditioned for it only a couple weeks after moving to LA, and that I guess director Brian De Palma and George Lucas were doing auditions together for Carrie and Star Wars, which is so weird because there's such different films. But can you tell us about that first big audition and what they asked you to do?
Yes, that was just, fortuitous, kismet, whatever you want to call it, because I realized with my musician husband that, he was on a different track than I was. He was involved in a lot of the recording artists there in New York City. He was from East Hampton. He enjoyed New York City. I had been there now 5 years and was kind of thinking, I don't think I'm really right for the Broadway scene. And even though I liked a lot of people, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I couldn't stay up late. It was perfect for modeling because you got to get up early, you got to keep your skin looking nice. And so I decided I was going to move to LA. And it's very bizarre because, in those days, I guess in your 20s, things were easier and you weren't as afraid. I guess I had one little white Samsonite suitcase. I only had a modeling agent. She told me, I'll hook you up with Nina Blanchard in LA. Lester Lewis did not have any LA connections. So I landed, took a cab to the Magic Hotel in Hollywood Boulevard, got a room. And like within the next couple of days, Nina Blanchard, who was right down the street on Highland, said, oh, there's this casting situation going on. There's just these two guys are seeing everybody, all teenagers. You want to go? And I said, sure. So put on my overalls. The red hat was mine. I wore it because I was a model and was told, don't get sun on your face. You have to keep your skin looking nice. And I walk in after waiting an hour and a half in the hallway with a million other kids, walked in and it was George Lucas and Brian De Palma. At that point, we did not know them. We had never heard of them. It wasn't like a big deal. And Brian turned to George and said, I'll put her on my list. And George kind of nodded. And I turned to go. And Brian said, next audition, wear that hat. And I said, my red baseball hat? And he said, yeah. So subsequent 3 auditions later, which pretty much everyone that ended up in the movie was at those subsequent 2 or 3 auditions. And we just had read-throughs of the whole script. And every time he'd say, wear your hat.
Did you read for multiple roles?
Well, it was funny. It was at his apartment on Fountain. I remember Bill Catt and Amy Irving, and I think even Nancy Allen. The only person that wasn't there was Sissy, because she didn't come until the day of the screen tests. And that's because Jack Fisk was her husband, and he was the set designer, and he was begging Brian, please let Sissy at least audition. Now, she had already done Badlands and a couple other movies, and he thought she was perfect, but I guess Brian didn't want to include her, and he kept thinking Amy Irving was going to be Carrie. So she was always there. And so we would sit around the coffee table and we would take turns reading all the different parts, which I actually did my screen test for Nancy Allen's part, Chris Hardison, because there wasn't really much for Norma. Norma had one line in the script. She was not in the Stephen King novel. There was no character Norma. And then because of the way in the opening scene, when I take off my hat and hit Sissy over the head when she misses the point in the volleyball game, and one of my pins gets stuck in her hair, and I just ripped it out. And afterwards, I'm like, "I'm sorry, Sissy." And she said, "No, it's going to be great. It's going to look great on screen." And then Brian said, "That's so funny. We're going to book you for the rest of the time, and you're going to just be with Nancy Allen. You're going to be your best friend." And so that was all ad lib and all added and not in the script at all. And so I'm so grateful for my hat, for Brian, for Nancy.
I was just going to say,
wow.
you were originally cast just to be kind of like one of the girls at the school, not to be one of that. Wow.
Yeah.
And
I had a line. I mean, the opening line was "Thanks a lot."
Talk about being at
that
the right
was the
place
first
at the right
line.
time.
All because you were protecting your face from sun in LA.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is crazy, and that's such a good story about, and then look, and you become like, the second in command on the bully side, I guess I would say, right after
anything for Chris.
Exactly. I mean, when you're the head bully, you got to do it. Well, so, right after that big volleyball scene is the infamous plug it up shower scene, which is, chock full of nudity. But you were one of the only girls who got to be covered up by a towel. And I was wondering, did you request not to do nudity, or was that just a lucky coincidence?
Oh, you're very observant, because yes, this was my first movie. I mean, yes, I had done some things in New York, and I thought, oh my gosh, my parents are going to see this. This is.
I would have been the same way.
I mean, I didn't go to college. They're very upset about that, even though after seeing my Crisco oil commercial, they were like, oh, Pamela's on TV. That was kind of exciting for them, but it doesn't really replace going to college. But so then, yes, there's just no way. I had to have a towel. I didn't even ask. I just put the towel. Everybody else was just taking off their clothes and happy to be in bras. And I'm like, oh, no. And it was fine, because I really, I was the tomboy of the group. Everybody else was trying to look pretty and have lipstick and have their hair curled, and I had braids and hat and overalls. I'm like, this is going to make me stand out. I was very conscious of
was
that.
it the first film you filmed? Like, was it filmed in order? So, like, was this your first day? I mean, like, or was it the volleyball scene?
Was the shower scene one of the first scenes filmed?
Gosh, I think it actually was. I think.
Oh God.
I don't have a very clear memory of when, although that would have been in the studio, Culver City Studios. I think possibly I think the volleyball scene would have been first, because I was only supposed to be on for 2 or 3 days, and then he called my agent, who by that time, having a modeling agency and then getting a movie, I had to get an actual agent. Yeah. And then she recommended somebody, and so and she was a really nice lady, and they called and she said that Brian wanted me on for the rest of the 6 weeks, because then everybody was on for 6 weeks. So it was going to be
And good for you for standing up for like what you were comfortable with. It's funny, we are 2 gay men, so we just, watch this shower scene and we're like, oh, okay. It's
trust me, the cinematographer and all the crew, they were very happy to be watching that. Yeah, well, I think we need to do it again.
Oh God, I can't even imagine.
Steam.
Oh God, I can't even imagine. And I'm
seeing it and going, oh my God, Nancy, is that really what you want to do?
I mean, I remember the first time I saw Carrie and I was like, wait, this film was made in 1976, because I didn't even know they could do that. Yeah. Of course we have to ask about working with director Brian De Palma. Like, what was his directing style like? And is it true he asked you out during production? Because I think I heard you mention that on the Thing with Two Heads podcast.
Well, yes to both those. His not both. His directing style was very intense. He would sit on his director's chair and have a lot of communication with Mario Tosi, the cinematographer. To him, the look of the setup and the scenes were very important, of course, as it is with everybody. But he just seemed to take extra time with that and less time with talking to actors, which some directors do instead. When we did do the auditions at his apartment, on his dining room wall, which was a fairly large dining room, on all 4 walls, covered from top to bottom, were storyboards of, I think, the entire movie. I mean, every scene was drawn out, and there was stuff written on it, like, this is how I'm going to film this. I want to do this, blah, 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 little notes. And I was like, wow, this is how you make movies? You have to draw it out first, like a comic book. I was pretty impressed, but so he knew that the scene went well if at the end he smiled. He had like a little bit of a sardonic, devilish little grin, and then he didn't ask for another take, or let's go in for close-ups, because you always do the master and then you do close-ups and whatever. But so the least amount of takes on a scene, you knew, but he would never say that was great or do this or try that.
Wasn't the biggest people person, I take it.
Right. But the thing about it's not that he asked me out. He followed. I had a little blue truck, and we left the studio, and I noticed the car driving behind me, and we're going up Coldwater Canyon, and all of a sudden, it's like he was trying to drive me off the road. So I pulled over into this driveway, and then he stopped behind me. And then I realized it was him. And he came out and he said, come have a drink with me. And I go, that's okay. I'll see you tomorrow.
You're like, I'll see you tomorrow. Wow. I got to say, anytime I'm trying to get someone's attention, I start by running them off the road. Then I ask them out.
Facebook Messenger. There was no
apps that you could just talk to someone. That's funny.
Right. Well, that's true. But the weird thing is then, not weird, but fortuitous for Amy Irving, he invited his good friend Steven Spielberg to the set, who none of us knew. So, I mean, and of course, he looked a little geeky back then. I don't think many of us young girls were thinking that was a hot guy to go out with. But
has he ever not looked geeky?
That's right. Well, yeah, I guess he's improved with age. I don't know. In any event, he did ask all of us out one by one, and we all said no, except Amy Irving, and we all know she went out, and obviously they hit it off. So
wow.
And very famously, they wrote their what's it called on a napkin?
Vows?
Not vows. They wrote on the napkin, like, if they get a divorce.
Oh, a
like,
prenup.
Prenup on a napkin. And
wow.
it's a famous story to this day.
I don't know if I believe that, though, because Steven Spielberg hadn't really done anything of note up to that point. And so there wouldn't have been you know what I mean? Or maybe the prenup, maybe they got married after. No, I don't know. I don't know his film chronology, but I think that was fairly early on.
But not
Jaws was
E.T.
75.
Yeah, but that
Not
wouldn't
E.T.
have been, I mean, I guess it had a lot. They had, but I mean, really, what kind of prenup? She ended up with $100 million as her settlement.
That is some napkin.
Wow.
So
Hey, you know what? PJ, I will go out with Steven Spielberg for $100 million. You know, so Carrie, of course, has a humongously like an all-star cast, including yourself and Sissy Spacek, Piper Laurie, Amy Irving, John Travolta, Betty Buckley, Nancy Allen. We have to ask you just about a few of these, starting with Sissy Spacek. What was she like during filming? Like, did she try to keep her distance from you guys, or did you guys all become friends?
Well, we all became friends, of course, but yeah. And Sissy, like I said, we met. She came in during the screen test. So here all of us had seen everybody that was at the screen test, at the read-throughs, and then all of a sudden in comes the Sissy, who's dressed in a little sailor dress. And I knew her from New York. She actually dated Bobby Bloom, who wrote Montego Bay in New York City. She was trying to be a musician in New York City. But in any event, so I said, "Oh, hey, hi, Sissy. What are you doing here?" She said, I'm reading for the part of Carrie. I said, "Oh, you are? Fantastic." And then apparently, obviously, she blew everybody away with her screen test because she had the perfect look. I mean, she was perfect. And so then when we started filming, she came to us all and said, "Look, I really want to hang out with you girls, but I need to feel alienated. It's going to work for my character if I'm not part of the fun and game. So I'm not being rude. I just want to let you know." And that lasted about 2 weeks. She couldn't stand it. She said, "I think I can handle it, being friends with everybody and having fun and still getting into character."
I mean, maybe you wouldn't even have known this, but was there any like resentment from Amy Irving since she was supposed to play that and then she didn't get it, or was she totally happy with? Because the role of Sue Snell is a great role also, but did you sense any of that?
Not at all. I think that Amy probably was happy because she did have a pretty good role. And her part was perfect. And once you saw Sissy in action as Carrie, I mean, there's just no denying that she was meant to play the role. I mean,
oh my God, yeah.
And then Piper Laurie was just spectacular. So, and then Amy Irving's mother got to play her real mother.
I know, so cool.
She was her real mother. So it was kind of cool, and she got Steven Spielberg. So,
and how was John Travolta? Any funny stories about him?
He was great. Everybody, first of all, this was pretty much everybody's first movie, and everybody was tickled to death. It was we were being paid favorite nations. That meant that everybody got the same pay. So it was $600 a week, which for me, my apartment on Franklin was $200 a month. I was like, over the moon.
Oh my God, you were in the money.
And it was like, woo! So, but everybody was in excellent spirits. It was just going to be it was going to be a quick shoot. We all knew our parts. We're all older. None of us were teenagers, which, going back to that shower scene, obviously couldn't have done that if we weren't all already in our 20s. So, but so every day we just had a blast. We watched each other doing their scenes. So we just really had a really good time. And John Travolta was the most fun. I mean, he just always was prancing around, always grabbing somebody's hand and like trying to do a little dance with them. He just was a love bug. I mean, and the great thing about Brian De Palma, he wanted us all to go see the daily. So at 5:00, shooting's done, Culver City Studios, walk around the corner, watch what you filmed yesterday, which was unheard of. Most directors would not let their cast in, but we did it like, okay, we're going to go watch movies for a half hour and they're of us, and we got to see the scenes. We saw Brian sit in the back with his secretary, who was marking down the scenes that he liked or what he didn't like. He would always be having a running commentary. And whenever I came on the screen, John Travolta would just howl with laughter and afterwards say, "Oh my God, PJ, you are so funny. You are just so funny." So that's why he asked me to be in The Boy in the Plastic Bubble.
Yeah, that's so cool.
He was so nice.
That's great. And then you mentioned Piper Laurie. I wanted to clear something up because it's so funny. Like, when you're doing research for one of these interviews, I found on IMDb trivia, which is usually wrong, but I'm still going to read it. It says that Piper Laurie became your mentor during Carrie, but then I heard you mention that you didn't actually meet her until later at convention. So which is correct?
Yes, and I wish I could figure out how to change that. I've gone into IMDb DB Pro and tried to change it because it's absolutely, I don't know who wrote that. It's absolutely false. I did not ever meet her on the set. Didn't meet her. I don't even think I met her when we had the cast and crew screening, of which I don't really even remember that. But it was that's just a weird paragraph in there that's totally false. But I have met her at conventions and did a screening up in Portland, Oregon at the Hollywood Theater, me, Nancy, and Piper. And she's just delightful. And I loved her book. And, I think she's had a wonderful career. And she just brought such credibility to Carrie. I think that she puts this stamp of nobody else could have played that role. So good on Brian De Palma for seeking her out.
Yeah, exactly.
Who were you closest to while filming?
Nancy and I got very close. In fact, when she started to have her eye on Brian De Palma, I'm like, but he has a girlfriend. She's been coming down to the set every once in a while. And, but anyway, she just decided she was in love. But yeah, and we're still very good friends. So, and Bill Catt, I see all the time. Amy Irving and Bill Catt had been an item in high school, and Amy thought I would be perfect for Bill. So she kept trying to play matchmaker, but I don't know. I like more of the bad.
I love all these romances going on.
Young,
Yeah, and now on to probably the most famous scene in the film, the prom massacre. Do you remember how long that entire scene took to film? Because there's just so much that happens. Do you remember how long that took?
It was 3 days.
Oh, that's it?
3 days it took. And well, that seemed pretty long to us, but I mean, it was, and I remember Brian said, well, do you have any of these guys here, playing these roles that you want to have your boyfriend? Because you have to have a scene. We're going to do the exchange of ballots. Because again, it wasn't really in the script. So I said, yeah, Michael Talbot, he's so funny. And he was the funniest guy on the set. He just was hilarious. He ended up playing Switek in Miami Vice.
Oh.
So, yeah.
And so he was your boyfriend at the prom?
Yeah, so he played my butt.
Gonna say, and then of course there's the big accident that happened during your death scene in the film, where I think it was the water pressure from the fire hose ruptured your eardrum. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Brian had this idea that he wanted the fire hose to bat my head around and look like my neck broke, and the fire chief said, well, that's going to be too much force. We can't really do it half force, and that's not really a good idea. And then Dick Zeiker, who was the stunt coordinator, said, well, I'll man the fire hose and I'll make sure it's okay. But I turned, it bats my head around. I turned my head and the full force went in my ear. And it just when you break an eardrum, you just black out, and it slithered down the benches there, and the grips came running over and carried me to my dressing room. And I had it's called a ruptured my eardrum, went just down the street to Brotman Hospital. And, for about 6 months, I had to get special drops, and had to get my ears checked. But I have better hearing than ever. And then ironically, Brotman Hospital is where I delivered both of my kids, in 83 and 88. For some reason, my the natural childbirth center was there in Culver City, and that's where they did their births. So in their birthing rooms. It's so cool.
Is it true that the scene they show in the film is the scene where you were injured?
Yes, absolutely. Because that was the last. I didn't come back to the set after that.
I was just about to ask you, are you done filming? I mean, you were really done.
I was going to be done filming anyway, but that really put the stamp on it.
Oh my God. Yeah. And then, and also I have to ask, because obviously the red cap became your thing. Was it your idea or Brian De Palma's to even have you wear the red cap at the prom?
Well, I will have to give credit to Brian, because he just made such a big deal out of that. In fact, the first day I showed up, I got out of my truck. I come walking up, and he goes, where's that hat? I go, you mean my red hat? And I said, it's in the truck. He goes, well, go get it. And I was like, well, okay. Then I started thinking, did he hire the red hat, or does he like me? What's going on here?
This guy has a red hat fetish.
I should have given him the red hat. But in any event, then I come out with my prom dress on, my hair all curled, looking, I thought, oh, for once, Norma's looking, pretty dressed up here, not like a tomboy. And he says, PJ, something's missing. And I said, Brian, you want me to wear? He said, Norma always wears her hat. And that's what he said.
That is hilarious.
And it turned out being great. And then there's that scene where Edie McClurg and I are under the hairdryer. And as a joke, I put it on top of the hairdryer and he just howled. He loved that. And I thought, oh my God, that's really funny.
Well, two questions. Was there a premiere and did you wear the red cap? And do you still have the red cap? And what was your thoughts seeing it on the big screen for the first time?
You know what? I really have no memory of like I said, the cast and crew screening, and I don't have a memory. It wasn't like a premiere like there would be today. They didn't for that movie. They didn't make such a big deal out of it. It was still a low budget, even though it was a studio picture. But yeah, I just really don't remember. It must have been in Westwood, but for some reason, right. Maybe I was filming something else. I just don't know. But I had the hat for quite a while. I took all the pins off and put it in my washing machine one time. And it was made of felt. And when I took it out, the whole thing just disintegrated in my hands. And I was so bummed because I really did love the hat. But two fans in two separate conventions have replicated the hat. So I have two perfect red hats, and they somehow managed to make the pins, and they put the rainbow patch and the cloud patch on the side. So I was so touched and honored. So I do have two Norma replica hats.
That's amazing.
Did you happen to catch the 2013 Carrie? Did you have any thoughts on that?
The remake, yeah.
Well, I watched the television version, and then I watched, the movie one. The movie one was okay. I mean, you can't catch lightning in a bottle twice. It just, our cast, and it was just so special. It's like Halloween. The characters and the casting and the lighting and the directing and the cinema, it's just the whole package. And so, no, I was disappointed. Certainly with The Rage, I didn't like that at all. I thought the girl that played Carrie was definitely miscast.
And they killed Amy Irving in the sequel, which was ridiculous. Ridiculous. Well, PJ, now I've been really, really excited about this. I've been containing my excitement, but moving on to the film that has had such a huge influence on both my life and just the horror genre in general, 1978's Halloween. So it sounds like, from what I've read, that director John Carpenter always had you in mind for the role of Lynda after seeing you in Carrie. So can you tell us about the audition for that film?
Yes. I mean, in retrospect, yes, I've heard that. He didn't tell me that at the time. But again, you go up to for auditions, and it was unusual to actually read with the director. So when I walked in, I'm expecting the casting agent, but instead they're like, oh, go in. John Carpenter wants to say hi to you. So go in, say hi. And he said, hey, let's read this scene together. So we read a scene together, and he offered me the part, which again is unheard of. He said, hey, do you want to play this part of Lynda? I said, absolutely. And he said, well, you're the only one that read the word totally right. And I said, well, how else would you say totally? He said, well, that's why you got the part. So
he's like, don't even have to say.
It's because of our reading that he hired me. But then I heard later that, obviously had seen Carrie, probably saw all the girls in Carrie, and they had auditioned quite a few girls. So,
well, I'm sure that even if he did have you in mind, I'm sure you nailed the audition, and that solidified it for him, Oh,
well, thank you. It was fun. I mean, in those days, yes, and I remember in my 20s, certain roles, certainly, Carrie was my first, so that is different, but Halloween, and not because Halloween was in my mind was going to become what it did, but because it was a part, and I knew I could do it, and I just wanted it so badly. And the same with Riff Randall and Rock and Roll High School. You just set your meter to, I got this, and you do it.
No, that's great. And I gotta ask, did they give? Okay, so Lynda's last name in the film is Vanderklok, which is a very distinct name. Did they give that to Lynda because of your heritage, like having a German heritage?
No. Well, no, my heritage would be Dutch. I was born in Frankfurt because of my parents, but my father was from Rotterdam, Holland. But no, I mean, that was in the script. That's, from Deborah Hill, I guess, because my understanding is she wrote the girls' parts, and she came up with the totally. And Haddonfield, Illinois she was from Haddonfield, New Jersey. So, it was all Deborah Hill, who was wonderful.
Yeah. And, another site that isn't always accurate, Wikipedia, said said that John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, who was a co-writer, co-producer, initially wanted to cast Dennis Quaid, who I know you were dating at the time, as your on-screen boyfriend, Bob. Is that true?
Well, yes. Let's see. That was, because we got married in 78. So November of 1978. So, but he was working on a television movie called Bill with Mickey Rooney, and they went through the dates and he wasn't available for the dates to do that. But yes, that was what they were thinking about. But after I did the audition with John, he said, I got 3 guys outside waiting, to play your boyfriend. Can you help me choose them? So I sat through their read-throughs, and then I said, oh, John Michael Graham, he's so cool. He'll be perfect. And we had a really good chemistry.
That's awesome.
Do you remember any of the other actresses that read for Lynda?
No, I didn't see anybody else. And so maybe, they had gone through a bunch of people just to see, and then they had me come in, but I don't remember. It was pretty quickly after that where we all got together. The first shot of the 3 girls were on the steps, actually, of the casting offices, which were the Charlie Chaplin studios off Fountain. And they had us come and meet, and we're sitting there, and it looks like we've been friends forever.
Oh my God. Yeah. That is such an iconic, such an amazing photo.
I know.
And that was the first time we had laid eyes on each other, and we looked like we're best friends in high school. It was so cool.
I totally. So, Jamie Lee Curtis has said that in real life, she was more like your character, Lynda, or even the smart aleck Annie than the quiet, resourceful Laurie Strode. So which of the 3 girls, Lynda, Annie, or Laurie, would you say you were most like back in 1978?
Well, I can't say that Laurie was a nerd, although she was more of a nerdy girl, and nerd isn't appropriate, really. She was kind of a brainiac and a good student and a good daughter. And I probably was that. I took care of my 7-year-old brother. I made sure he went to and from school. We had to take the city bus when we lived in Brussels. I was hugely responsible, straight A student. I just, no boyfriends. And my best friend was Cindy Clark, who smoked and dated a Belgian guy. She would have me over to her house to spend the night. She would crawl out the window, and her mother would knock on the door. Is everything all right? Do you need anything? I go, no, we're fine. And Cindy wasn't there.
Oh my God, you were totally a Laurie.
So that was Lynda. I got to play Cindy Clark.
Oh my God, yeah. So you were kind of a
Laurie.
Yeah. Well, so on to the word you've become incredibly famous for, Totally. So what we want to know is, was Totally actually in the script as often as you said it, or was some of that ad-libbing?
No, definitely ad-lib. And I told John at the beginning, I said, I really like this word. I think that Lynda should say it more often. I'm going to push it. I'm going to say it as much as I can. But if you think it becomes annoying, let me know. But he never said, hey, and now try that without the totally. So I fitted in only when I thought it would work. And so I think, though, people have told me that I only say it like 11 times, which I find hard to believe. I haven't never counted myself, but at the conventions, somebody came up to me and said, that's a college drinking game? I said, it is? He said, yeah, we watch Halloween, and every time you say totally, we take a shot. He said, but we've never seen the end of the movie.
Oh my God. I was just going to say, maybe a sip, maybe not a shot. We're doing shots next time. I didn't even think about that. PJ, that is a great drinking game.
If you get through the end of the movie, I hope so.
I don't even know if I could do one shot today.
Yeah, Tim would be out after the first Totally.
I'm such a lightweight.
Me too.
What was it like working with John Carpenter and Deborah Hill?
Idyllic, I have to say. And certainly my only experience would have been Brian De Palma, who I told you was a little bit more, less of an actor's director, but he had a big production to stage, and it was more of a, I guess, I don't want to say significant, but there was a lot going on for Brian, and he came from New York, so he had a New York style. John, more laid back. The USC Film School. Nick Castle was on the set. Tommy Lee Wallace. They were all friends of his from film school. Nancy Keys was Nancy Loomis, who was married to Tommy Lee Wallace at the time. They had a child together on Halloween. So, this was like a family production. And then he and Deborah were a couple, until the end of the movie. But so it was just very relaxed. It was very much like, working with your family. I just remember being, excited to go to work every day, and we were there every day. You never knew when you were going to, be able to finish one scene and get to another. Because with John, it was 3 takes. That was it, because, film was expensive and they were on a very tight budget. And you had Donald Pleasance, who was only there maybe for a week, I think. So they had to get his scenes done. He got 100,000 though out of the 300,000. But
wow,
I did not know that.
I think I may have heard that.
So the film was really made for 200,000.
and John and Deborah acted like a team the entire time, right? Because I know John directed, but Deborah was so involved, right? Did they kind of work as a team?
It was really like a co-directing, and then really a third with Dean Cundy, the DP. The 3 of them, but really I always remember John and Deborah hush hush talking to each other, and very gentle. It was a very quiet set, very not histrionic, not, very, very calm. It was very soothing, very nice. You felt like also you could contribute any ideas that you had. So always open to ad-libbing, as was obviously Brian with my part, because there was nothing written on the script, but that was really the only aspect of that. But with John, he was really open to anyone, in fact, Nick Castle, who puts the sheet on, and after the kill with John Michael Graham down in the kitchen, Bob, Tommy Lee Wallace was supposed to do that, and he had gone to run an errand. And so John said, Nick, you just put a sheet over your head and just strangle PJ.
Hey, just strangle PJ.
It was so casual. And then we did that actually 3 times. If you ever heard the outtakes, the first 2, I'm just giggling away because he's tickling my neck. And I'm saying, you're going to have to do it a little harder. And he's like, I don't want to hurt you. I go, you're not going to hurt me, but you have to give me some pressure here. Otherwise, I'm not going to feel like
that. Well, so yes, we wanted to ask you. It was
really funny.
We wanted to ask you about your big death scene because, I heard you mention that, like you said, John Carpenter let you ad-lib a lot of the dialogue when he's under the sheet and you're trying to get him back to bed. But what I need to know is, does that mean one of my favorite lines, see anything you like, was that ad-libbed or was that in the script?
Yeah, that was ad-lib. Because he was very nervous about me doing any kind of nudity. Mm-hmm. And of course I did in Carrie. So, and I thought to myself, well, I guess, I could do something like the quick little drop the sheet and pull it up, because I was thinking, I'm a high school girl. I'm a teenage girl. I'm not that sexy, and I can only do so much. I'm a young girl here. But he said, if you could just put in a little snippet of nudity. So all that dialogue, I had the nail file in my purse. So I took it out because I'm like, well, what would I be doing? I'm sitting here waiting. I'm not going to just be sitting here. I have to do something. And so the whole thing of, cute Bob, real cute, that whole thing was just an ad lib. And it only had Deborah Hill, John, and Dean Cundy were the only ones in the room because, he wanted to be very, mindful of how I was feeling. So, yeah. And I really didn't think it was a big deal. I mean, I thought I just took the sheet down and put it back up so quickly, but people noticed, I guess. And
the angle also, it's not like it doesn't just, like zoom in or anything. It's very slight.
Right.
How about the line, can't I get your ghost, Bob?
I think that might have been in there. That might have been. I can't check my script because I gave it to Rob Zombie for his 40th birthday. So.
Oh my God.
Nice. And now there's been so many repros of scripts that probably they took it from the movie. But yeah, that scene was like Lynda tries to entice Bob back to bed. That's pretty much what I remember it saying.
That's so funny. And then, and when you were doing the scene where Nick Castle's strangling you, said it took 3 takes. Was it weird having to just make all those choking, grunting sounds for so long because it just goes on for so long?
Well, that was my choice because that was going to be, that's a wrap on PJ. So the whole time I'm getting strangled, I'm going, oh my God, I'm not going to get to go to the set anymore. This is going to be it. I'm going to be done with this movie. This is too sad. And so I just wanted to capture maximum screen time. So the whole time, even when I go out of frame, I'm like,
I would have done the same thing.
You're like, hey, just a few more chokes. And
then everybody laughed after that because they obviously knew I was prolonging the, yay, that's a wrap on PJ.
Oh, well, of course we have to ask you about working with Jamie Lee Curtis, as I know Halloween was her very first movie. What was she like while filming? Was she kind of like as funny and outspoken as she is today?
Not hilarious and not outspoken, but full of life and joie de vivre. She was very happy. She was a little I would say a lot nervous because she thought, oh gosh, this is a gift. I'm the lead. Oh my gosh, I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to get fired. For the first 3 days, I think she was like more of a nervous wreck, but she always had a huge smile. She was always, happy. But no, she's definitely not the outspoken, but she was definitely a force on the set of happiness, giddiness, and really just delight. She was just really a light on the set.
Yeah.
And she was only 19. Nancy and I I was 26. And I think Nancy's a year older, maybe 27. So we were like,
oh, wow. So, yeah. Okay. So that's definitely different than 19.
She was 19 and this was her first movie. I think she'd done something before this, but she was just extremely, and really, I don't know what Nancy thought, but having not been a student of film, I didn't really think about Tony Curtis or Janet Leigh. I didn't think of that at all. To me, this was, Jamie. She's cool girl.
So here's something I've always wanted to know from your perspective. Do you think Lynda, the character of Lynda, thought that it was Bob that killed her? Because, Michael approaches her from behind, is strangling her, and the sheet doesn't fall till the end. So in your opinion, do you think that she thought her own boyfriend was killing her?
Yeah, I've never thought about that. That would be a new thought. I think the thought process would be, why isn't Bob taking off the sheet? Why didn't Lynda rip off the sheet and drag him back into the bed? Why did she jump up and want to call Lori? This is going nowhere. This is what she said. But so I don't think you can overanalyze that scene too much, because then you'll fall into all the holes of why wouldn't she have, he's breathing heavily. He's got Bob's glasses on. So it would make sense that it is Bob, but is it Bob? Why is he playing such a big game? It's just taking too long. And he was supposed to bring a beer. They were supposed to drink a beer and then go back at it again. So what's going on?
I know.
So I don't think as she was being strangled, she thought of anything but how do I survive myself?
How do I breathe? Yeah. And then the most important question, if Lynda had survived, do you think she ever would have left Bob for Devon Graham? Because he was cute.
Well, that's a good question, but I think if she had survived that, her parents might have moved her away from Haddonfield.
Oh yes, I would hope so. Yeah. So was there any type of cast and crew screening for Halloween? When was the first time you saw it?
Yes, I do remember at the Directors Guild we watched and I remember my first thought was seeing the credits and seeing the opening credits with the pumpkins. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. That's really cool. And then the music started and I was like, what? That music is really good. And then, I really thought it was wonderful. And for me, my point of view was, yes, I'd probably get another job after this because I think the movie's really good, and I like what I did. I'm not embarrassed by it. I think it's going to be good. I'll have to explain to my parents that little scene, even though it's so minor, it's still my parents.
So cool.
But we all just were thinking it was really great, but not to the point where it's a hit movie. Everyone's going to love this.
The
50 years from now, we're going to be signing autographs.
I know that 45 years later, you still would. No, it's incredible. And I know
the only thing was I'd probably get another job. So, phew. Dodged a bullet.
No, that's great. And, a couple years later, I know while they were making Halloween 2, I think they had you come back to film an additional scene for the TV version of Halloween. So what was it like returning to film another scene with Jamie Lee and John Carpenter, especially a couple years later?
Yeah, well, that I think it maybe was just 1 year later. I don't remember.
Oh.
I don't remember the time on that, but obviously we still all looked the same and it was fun to reunite. And I think Jamie used to come over to my house all the time. So it wasn't like I hadn't seen her. Wasn't really in touch with Nancy Loomis and not with John, but Jamie, yes, we became very good friends. And yeah, so seeing everybody again, Dean Cundy. It might have been a couple of years later because Dean Cundy was the DP on Rock and Roll High School.
Oh yeah,
so that was awesome. I knew I was in good hands when he showed up. I was like, yay! So, but that was fun. I think I was borrowing a blouse from her.
She has her hair in a towel because I think Jamie Lee had cut her hair there, and that was the way they could explain it.
Right. Oh yeah, and I do remember at the cast and crew screening that John Carpenter walked in with Adrienne Barbeau, like they were holding hands, and we were all like, what happened? What's going on? So that's the first time we were aware. And I was crushed because I thought, oh, Hollywood couple, like me and Dennis, and Deborah and John, they were so wonderful. They worked so well together. This was their baby. And then he's walking in with Adrienne Barbeau, who we didn't know. We just knew this gorgeous girl with giant boobs was coming in with John.
Did Deborah Hill attend also while he was there?
Of course, it was the cast and crew screening. I think that all happened with her blessing, and it might not have been the relationship that we all, just because they were living together and whatever, that we all thought that it was, or maybe they were just very good friends, or maybe they had, permissions. I don't know. I think, it didn't seem like Deborah was ever upset about it or anything. I don't know about her private life, but, it seemed she was there, and it was, everybody was friends. So, and we had a wrap party at Deborah and John's place. This was before Adrienne Barbeau, and the band played. His band played.
The Coupe de Ville.
I've seen that one picture. I love it.
Yeah, and Dennis was there, and we had a great time.
I love that. Moving forward to Halloween H2O 20 years later, is it true that you were first offered the role of Norma, Jamie Lee's secretary, that later went to her mom, Janet Leigh?
No, I never heard that. That would.
Here's another. Hey, again, but all these.
She did invite me to that premiere. That premiere I remember was in Westwood, and I thought, oh well, this will be fun. And it was really crowded, and way across the lobby, I saw Jamie, and she spotted me, and she came running over, and there's all these cameras, everybody, like they do with the red carpet, whatever, and she yells out, "Fuck! PJ, come here!" I'm like, oh my God.
Sounds like Jamie Lee.
Fuck in front of everybody. I was like, oh my God.
That's hilarious. I love that. Yeah.
And I liked the movie. I thought that was great. And I love that her mother was in it. And so and then we thought, well, that's going to be the end of the Halloweens now. Enough already. Who knew?
Jump to 2018. Your voice is as the teacher in the 2018 version. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because a couple of years before they were doing that, John Carpenter, and we'd been in touch here and there with emails, and I had seen him here and there, but he had invited me to lunch and just to see how I was doing. And I think he probably wanted to see what I was up to, maybe what I looked like, blah, blah, blah. I had my two kids, and they were often, my son's a commander in the Coast Guard. My daughter teaches yoga, and she's a musician, and, they're both married now. They both have kids, and he just, and his son, Cody, was in Japan teaching English, but he really wanted to be a musician. So he was kind of checking in on me. And I said, yeah, I mean, it'd be fun. I mean, yes, Lynda died, but if they're going to start doing more Halloweens, I could play another part, And then he didn't say anything about it. And then I heard about this, and I emailed him. I said, hey, there's this new movie. Do I get to have a part? And he goes, if it was up to me, you would be the star of the movie. And I'm like, okay, but that didn't go anywhere. But I think he might have put in a word maybe to
David Gordon Green.
And so David Gordon Green sent me an email asking if I would do the voice of the teacher, would replicate the scene in the original movie, doing the little bit about poetry. So I wrote right back. I said, absolutely, but only if I can say totally.
That's great.
And he wrote back, absolutely. So I never met him, but we did it. I went down to his studio, and he was on Skype, and he directed me while we were recording I did it 3 or 4 times, different ways, like he asked me. And each time I made sure I always put totally in, because I thought they're not going to get away with using the one where I didn't say totally. And the only reason I want to do this is for the fans that I add with the little Easter egg of saying totally. So
it's such a good Easter egg. And, did you end up seeing Halloween 2018 or Halloween Kills or Ends?
Just snippets of it. No, I didn't. I didn't, just because it didn't seem relevant to our movie. And I don't know. It's just
Well, I do want to
don't
let
know.
you know, you have the voice cameo in Halloween 2018. In Halloween Kills, they show your photo on TV, a picture of you from that time because they're talking about like the massacre. And then in Halloween Ends, Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie, she has a picture in her home. It's that picture of you, Annie, and her from the first one.
Kaplan Studios?
Yeah, from the studios up in her home. So your presence is kind of felt throughout all three of the movies.
Well, I'll tell you that they have to have permission. They had to have required because of SAG-AFTRA. They had to ask permission. And the second movie, that's my personal photograph. David Gordon Green reached out to me, asked if I had any pictures of me from that time period. And I have that picture. It's actually taken by Bobby Carrie. It might have been taken by Dennis Quaid, but I said Bobby Carrie because they needed a release from the photographer. I'm like, okay, I'm probably not going to get Dennis to like get in touch with me, even though I don't know why not. I mean, water under the bridge. We've had wonderful lives, so why not? But in any event, so Bobby had to sign off that he took the picture. He got paid. I got paid to submit one of my own pictures from my photo album, The Green Jacket. I love that picture. It's great. It's from those dates. And then the other one, the other movie, yes, we had to sign off on that. And I actually got paid and I'm in the credits and get residuals. So I'm like, very
awesome.
happy about that.
And I love
SAG-AFTRA has been working very good on my behalf.
Yeah, and again, like as fans of, or especially big fans of the original, it's just nice to have those little Easter eggs and that like the characters are
people love it.
there.
Yes, they love it, and they bring me the posters, and I sign them, and I'm like, but I was in it. I have a picture in it. They go, it's okay, you're in it.
No, this is great. Well, but before we wrap up, PJ, we want to play a little game with you where we ask you some quick questions, and you simply have to answer with either Carrie or Halloween. And don't worry, we're not testing your knowledge or trivia or anything. It's just okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. First one. Which have you seen more times in your life?
Halloween.
Okay. This is going to be a tough one. Which do you think is the better overall horror film?
Halloween.
Good answer. No.
Which had more drama on set while filming?
Carrie.
I think I already know the answer to this one, but which had more behind the scenes romances?
Oh, Carrie.
Which had the scarier villain?
Halloween.
Which would you say has more cast members you're still in touch with today?
Carrie.
Which do you get asked about more by fans?
Halloween.
Ah.
And the final one, which did you show your kids first?
Halloween, yes. But my son was 13, and my daughter, well, she was much younger, but we were invited down to Disneyland, and they were going to show a screening on the big screen, and they were going to give my kids tickets to Disneyland the next day if I would come. So I was like, all right. And I wanted to do a Q&A, whatever. So let's see, my son was 13 and my daughter would have been 8. Oh gosh.
I just thought that Disney was doing a screening.
It was down in Anaheim.
Oh, okay.
But they got me to go there because they were going to give me tickets to Disneyland for the next day to take my kids. So, but in any event, we're there and the lights dim, and all of a sudden there's Michael Myers is walking around the audience during the entire screening. I was so freaked out. My daughter just put her head down on my lap. My son was really freaked out. So, if you really want to have a terror showing of Halloween, have somebody dress up as Michael Myers with the knife and walk around and sit behind.
I think we've experienced it, PJ, because we've been to so many screenings, and there's always a few people that are dressed as Michael, and there's always that tiny part of me that's like, what if they're crazy?
Right, exactly. So it really gives you that extra squeamy feeling.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, we don't have the time to ask you about every horror film you've ever starred in, but we did want to wrap up with just a couple questions about a few of other films. And first off, we saw that in 1977, between, I guess, Carrie and Halloween, you were in a TV horror movie called The Possessed with Harrison Ford. So what was your experience on that film like?
That was fun because there were a lot of girls. And so talk about Harrison Ford playing footsies with everybody. I don't know who he ended up with, but it wasn't me. and he was married at the time. But
these men in the 70s.
I know.
Jesus. What?
I think it was James Ferrantino. I thought that was great. That was up in Oregon or Seattle. I forget. I think it was Oregon. It was at a girls' school, actually. And so it was fun because it was, the first time I got to travel. I was with a bunch of girls. I thought everybody was great in the movie. I didn't think it was a very good movie, though. I remember watching it and thinking, well, that wasn't really that scary.
Yeah. Well, you also reunited with your Carrie co-star, William Catt, who played Tommy Ross, for a brief cameo in the 1999 film Jawbreaker. So what was it like working with him again on that film just for that scene?
I had seen Bill a couple of times, probably at conventions. And so, yeah, we've always maintained a really fun relationship. He's a great guy. We really care about one another. And Darren Stein was fabulous. I loved him. He just loved Carrie so much, and he wanted some little homage and wanted to put the two of us together. So we were there for like 3 days, and we have barely show up in the film, but they cut a lot of the stuff. But it was
it's
really
noticeable though. Like I
was so excited when I saw you guys.
I'm so excited too.
I know,
like,
but we had this whole drama thing of when the door opens and we see our daughter, and we're both crying over, and we're trying to wake her up, and it was so wonderful. But obviously didn't relate to the picture. But I love the look of that movie. I just think it's a fantastic movie. I think it should have done better than it did. I think it should be a cult film.
We
love it.
It is okay, good, because and the DP, what's the girl's name? Amy. I can't remember her name, but she every day, I was only there 3 days, but each morning she'd come out with this gigantic photo book, and she'd open up, she'd gather her crew around. She'd go, this is what I want the scene to look like. This is the lighting I'm going for. And I thought, oh, wow, that's really great. I like to see an artist at work.
Yeah, no, that's, and especially that they'd share that with you and like that, that's great. Also, you had a role.
Amy Vincent, that was her name.
Oh, Amy Vincent.
Yeah.
You also had a role in Rob Zombie's 2005 film, The Devil's Reject. So what was Rob Zombie like to work with, and what was it like being punched by Sid Haig?
Well, that's interesting because my agent called and said, this guy, Rob Zombie, you probably know, he's a musician. He's doing this movie, and they want you to go down to Santa Monica and do audition. So I went down there, put a scene on tape. It had nothing to do with getting hit. It wasn't anything from that movie, I don't think, from Devil's Rejects. And then I didn't know anything about him. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll go to Blockbuster. I rented House of a Thousand Corpses, and I watched it. Called my agent and said, no, pull me out, withdraw me, not interested. And then, so I didn't hear anything. And then about a month later, she said, well, you got the booking. I said, the booking for what? And she said, for Rob Zombie. I said, no, I don't want to be in one of those movies. And she said, no, here's the scene. I'm going to send you the scene and read it. And guess what? You don't get killed. And I said, oh, I don't get killed. Okay, then I'll look at it. So it was one day I had to drive way out in the desert near Palmdale or some creepy location. But it was wonderful working with Sid Haig. He directed the whole thing about the punch. And the first time I turned the wrong way and he hit me and he goes, PJ, you're supposed to turn the opposite way.
Oh, God.
It's a fake punch. It's not a real punch. And he was so sweet and so nice. And I made the mistake of giving Rob Zombie. Somebody had sent me a tape of Local H's Whatever Happened to PJ Souls. And I thought, well, he's a music guy. I don't know anything about him, but I'll give him. I know he likes music. And then he just would play it all day long, blasting out just that one song, whatever. And then at lunch, he came to my table. I'm sitting there eating a salad, and he dumps all these posters and photographs and I don't know, stuff on the table. It was like 50 things. And he threw a Sharpie down. He said, yeah, can you sign all this to me? Just put to Rob. Okay.
Wow. So he was a fan.
Yeah.
Wait. You said you gave him your original script to Halloween. I have to ask, is that what inspired him to do a remake of Halloween?
I think it's possible because after we did that scene, and, you know, he was very nice. I mean, I thought he was wonderful. And I met Bill Moseley and I met his wife, Sherry, but I wasn't in a scene with them, just with the little boy who never acted again, probably because of that scene. And Sid was wonderful. And since then, obviously he's passed away now, but at conventions, everybody loves Sid Haig. He just was the nicest man ever. So became friendly with Rob. He invited us to a couple things. And one was his 40th birthday party. So it was going to be held at this club. I never go out. I never do things, but I'm like, all right. And all day I'm thinking, what can I give him? What can I give him? And I look through my scripts because obviously he likes memorabilia because I signed 50 things at lunch. And I see my Halloween script is missing a cover. It's really ratty. It's got paper clips. I only had one paper clip. I couldn't even find another one to put on. I'm like, you know what? I bet this is the kind of thing he would like. So I wrote to him, blah, 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 totally PJ Souls. And I wrapped it up, went to this party. It's pouring rain at this club. Walk in, there's all these gifts piled high. I put my thin little wrap script in the pile. And then I go to sit down and Nick Cage walks in. And he walks in with this shrunken head in a glass case and everybody's swarming around. I'm like, oh, well, I guess my script's not going to mean anything, blah, blah, blah. So then we're leaving and going out and I'm visualizing somebody bringing all these gifts to the trunk of a car and the script falls down and it goes in a mud puddle and someone drives over it. This is crazy me. and then I forget about it, go to sleep. In those days, we had answering machines. 7:00 in the morning, my phone rings. And I'm like, just let the answering machine answer it. And I hear, this is Rob Zombie. Oh my God, that is the best present I've ever gotten in my entire life. No one is touching it ever but me. I love this so much. Thank you. Thank you. It's going in my vault. Nobody's ever going to put a fingerprint on it.
Wow.
So that's my story of Rob Zombie. And then a couple of years later,
and then he does a remake of Halloween, which was very, very different than your movie, I will say.
Right. But he probably poured through the script and he, had all my notes in there and everything.
That's awesome. And so obviously you've done a horror convention, but do you see another horror film in your future?
You know what? I just feel that with Halloween just being everybody's favorite, no matter how many Halloweens they make and no matter how many horror movies come down the pike, you just can't top that. So it'd be really hard to do, another one. I mean, I get tempted here and there, but the character would have to be really interesting. I'm older. And I don't know, it takes a lot to pull it together because you always want to do 100%. And, I would want to do something that my grandkids, I would want them to be proud of. And most of my films are when I'm younger. So it's a really hard call to think about doing something at this age. I don't mind the voiceovers and the things, the Q&As and meeting people at conventions. Everybody's so lovely. They always say how great I look. And that makes me feel good because, at 73, you know what you feel like.
Well,
and now I'm looking forward to my grandkids getting to see it. My 6-year-old grandson, Chase, he saw the trailer and he all he talks about is Michael Myers. Yeah, my grandmother was killed by Michael Myers. He's like always saying that. I'm like, don't say that, Chase.
That's so cool. Well, PJ, I mean, we as big fans of yours, like, yes, of course, Halloween is incredible, but like, I love seeing you in horror movies like nowadays, just because it's just so cool that you've embraced this genre so much. Like, as huge fans of horror films, it's just so cool that you have been open to doing more horror films and everything. So we hope that there is some more horror in your future.
Well, there has to be a really, really good part. I'm excited about Tony Massey and Matt Russell's board game, Halloween 2. That's something that just came out of the blue. And I thought, how exciting. What a great idea. So that's something to look forward to. I think they did a great job with the trailer. And
the trailer was great. And it's such
cool.
Like, it's such a detailed game. Like, you can tell how much of a fan Anthony Massey is of these movies because.
And Matt Russell. I mean,
yes,
my gosh. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. He was a fan I met in Chicago when he was in high school. And I encouraged him to move to LA to become a writer. So we go way back.
Wow.
I had gone to this convention. My daughter was in high school and she came with me and he kept coming back in my line. And I thought, gosh, he must like my daughter, Ashley, what's going on here? And then finally I said, meet me out in the lobby. Stop waiting in line. And then we talked to him and it turned out that he just loved Halloween so much. So I think it's great that he and Tony got together and that they have this project going out. So, but that could be a movie. Halloween board game.
Yes, exactly. Well, we have one final question for you, PJ, and thank you again so much for taking the time to just to make our day. Basically,
I don't know a bigger Halloween fan than Matt Emmer.
It's true, and I know it's I know you go to these conventions, and I'm sure everyone tells you Halloween is their favorite movie, but I can tell you, anyone who knows me, since I was age 11, when I first saw it with my mom, the TV version, it just, from the music to the characters to just to Michael Myers, everything, it was so creepy, and it just got me into the genre altogether. If it weren't for Halloween, I don't know if I would be a horror fan.
Wow, that's really saying something. Well, I really appreciate you, and I think that's a great story. And thank you so much. I mean, it's hard to always talk about myself. I'm not very comfortable with
I would love it.
We love it. Well, we have one final.
It's a really nice experience, and I thank you, because it's not something I really, wanted to do, is talk about myself all the time. But
well, we love it.
Easy and fun, and I appriteed your questions.
Of course. Well, thank you. We just had this one final question, and we asked this to everyone we interview on the podcast. It is, what is one thing that you can tell us about your experience working on either Carrie or Halloween that you've never told any other interviewer, publication, convention Q&A, or podcaster? It doesn't have to be anything crazy or juicy or whatever. Just one thing that you can tell us about your experience on either of those movies that you've never told any other interviewer.
Well, I could say something.
Please.
Oh, he leans in.
We are all ears, PJ.
All right. Well, let's see. I guess it was, we were doing day 2 of the prom scene in Carrie. And I think I got blood on me or something, and they did have a shower in the back. So I went to shower off, and Sissy came back and she offered me a joint.
Whoa, Sissy's face. I mean, you guys were of age, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely. But I am really a nerd, and I said no, but I always thought, wow. We're still on set. We're still working. I mean, I didn't have to go back to work, but then, afterwards she invited me and her husband, she was married, and she lived in Topanga Canyon. I lived in Studio City, to go hiking and stuff. And I did that once in a while, and we became friends. And then she moved to West Virginia. But I always look back on that and think that was so weird, because it wasn't weird. It's just that I wasn't into doing that, but I think that Sissy was, and that was kind of early. But I mean, most of my friends smoke pot. I mean, Dennis Quaid smoked pot.
When you declined her pot, did the lights break?
Yeah, did Carrie get mad at Carrie?
Exactly. I think I made the excuse I don't want to get your joint wet. I think that's what I said to her. as a lame excuse. But then I had this flashback back to Cindy Clark leaving me in her room and going out the window.
Real life Lynda.
I'm always the straight one. What is wrong with me?
Cindy Clark is the real life Lynda. And also, now I can watch Carrie, and no wonder why Sissy looks so relaxed in the prom.
Yeah,
No, just kidding. Well, thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yes,
that's a great story.
I love you, Sissy. I hope that's okay, but I think most people knew.
She's always commenting on our podcast.
She's always good. We hope we've really enjoyed this. We hope we get to meet you in person I think we're going to try to make it to the Halloween 45th convention.
Well, you better.
And because I want to get my action figure signed by you. Would only make my life.
Absolutely.
If I could get your.
And don't stand in line. Come to the front of the table and tell me who you are.
Oh,
no,
well,
you have to. I'll recognize you. I'll say, come, it's okay.
Well, thank you. That means so much. Seriously.
And I will totally give you hugs.
Oh, we will totally accept.
Yes. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We will definitely be in touch, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Take care. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Happy Horror Time.
This podcast is hosted by Tim Murdoch and myself, Matt Emmer. It's produced by Jacob Randall.
You can listen to the podcast directly on our website, happyhorrortime.com or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, or wherever you stream podcasts.
We release new episodes every Monday. The first Monday of the month is always an interview with a horror star, and every other week we review a new horror film. Now, our reviews do contain spoilers, but you can check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter/X social pages the Friday before release day to find out the movie we'll be discussing.
If you'd like to contact us, you can send an email to happyhorrortime@gmail.com.
And if you'd like to support the podcast, please sign up to be a patron at www.patreon.com/happyhorrortime. Patrons get access to our monthly bonus episodes, all our regular episodes ad-free and a day early, our monthly newsletter, the ability to vote in our polls, and Tim, are you ready for this?
Autographed Happy Horror Time stickers. I'm Tim Murdoch.
And I'm Matt Emmert, and we hope you have a happy horror time.